Good evening, and right before we dive in, I have to once again mention that the censorship on this platform is just getting out of this world. Every single day, they appear to reach a new level of ridiculousness. On the back end of this YouTube channel, I was suddenly informed that another one of my episodes has been deleted by the system. This was the episode where we exposed how the latest Pfizer booster formulation was tested on only 8 different mice prior to going to market. They had no completed human clinical trial data before it was made available. Now, that's not a conspiracy theory. It came straight from press releases that were put out by both the CDC as well as Pfizer. You literally just have to read those documents, and it's right there in black and white. But as you can see up on your screen, the episode was removed, and we were given an official warning because that information contradicted the quote-unquote expert consensus from local health authorities or from the World Health Organization. You literally cannot make this stuff up. And by the way, appealing that decision went absolutely nowhere. Our appeal was rejected, just like all the rest. And now, the American people no longer have access to that critical information. And so listen, I say this often, and I mean it every single time. If you are as sick and tired of all this censorship as I am, well, there is something you can do. Because the Epoch Times is extending its awesome sale on subscriptions. Just 25 cents a week for the whole year. If you do the math, that works itself out to just be $1 a month. And so if you are just as fed up with all this censorship as I am, and you want a source of honest news, well, I would highly recommend that you try the Epoch Times for yourself. I'll throw a link down there. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. You can just click on that link and head on over to the page where you can subscribe and try the Epoch Times for yourself. For again, just a single $1 a month. I'm sure you'll love it. And now, diving into today's main topic, which I hope will not also get censored, according to this new bulletin put out by the CDC, it turns out that the ancient disease known as leprosy has become more and more widespread over in the South, particularly in Central Florida. In fact, according to this report, 81% of all the leprosy cases in the whole country are located in Florida. And then furthermore, if you dig further down, 20% of all the leprosy cases in the country are found in Central Florida. Now, in case you've never heard of it before, leprosy is truly an ancient disease. It's in fact believed to be quite literally one of the oldest, if not the oldest, infectious diseases in human history. It's also featured quite prominently in the Bible. And leprosy, it manifests itself in a myriad of ways, including through skin lesions throughout the entirety of the body, nerve damage that leads to things like numbness in the extremities, nerves that become so thick that they actually become visible lumps underneath the skin, among many other problems that a person experiences. Now, the positive is that leprosy is treatable with a 1 to 2 year course of antibiotics, but it is also a serious disease. And if it's left untreated, it can cause serious nerve damage that results in either paralysis and or a crippling effect on the hands and feet. However, despite the fact that this disease is so old, the way it transmits from person to person is not completely fully understood. In fact, along that line, when writing specifically about the cases in the southern part of America, here's what the CDC wrote in their release. Quote, "Transmission of leprosy has not been fully elucidated. Prolonged person-to-person contact through respiratory droplets is the most widely recognized route of transmission. A high percentage of unrelated leprosy cases in the southern United States were found to carry the same unique strain of M. leprae as 9 branded armadillos in the region, suggesting a strong likelihood of zoonotic transmission." And so as you can see, similar to COVID, the bat, and the pangolin, one of their hypotheses here is that it is the presence of animals in the region, specifically the armadillo as well as the alligator, that are contributing to the surge in leprosy cases. However, there is a slight problem with that explanation, which is that a thorough investigation into the specifics of these cases found that many of these people had no contact with animals. In fact, this study right here that you can see up on your screen is titled "Leprosy Without Armadillo Exposure in the Eastern United States." And here is specifically what these researchers found after looking into it. Quote, "Leprosy has been reported in New York City, where there are no wild armadillos. Recent leprosy cases also have been reported in Georgia and Florida and blamed on armadillos, including cases with no known armadillo exposure. International migration needs to be considered as a cause of leprosy." International migration. Now, it's worth noting that there has not been definitive proof that this surge in cases is due to international migration, but it is really worth considering the fact that leprosy cases appear to be concentrated in southern states like Texas, Louisiana, Florida, California, and also the sanctuary city of New York City. It's kind of an interesting, you can say, coincidence that those are some of the states and the city with the highest proportion of illegal migration. And it's also worth mentioning that despite the fact that there are no real definitive studies here in America which look at the connection between illegal immigration and this upsurge in leprosy cases, studies exist in other countries. For instance, this study here that you can see up on your screen is titled Epidemiology of Leprosy in Spain, the Role of International Migration. And what the researchers behind this particular study were able to do was to show a link between this surge in leprosy cases in Spain with a 5-fold increase in migration from countries where leprosy was prevalent. And despite what you might assume, just based on geography, the majority of these migration-based leprosy cases were not coming from the African continent, even though Spain is literally just a few miles from Africa. Instead, these researchers found that the spike in Spain's leprosy cases was caused by migrants from Central and South America. Here's specifically what they wrote, quote, "Of the 168 leprosy cases registered during the study period, 24.6% were in Spanish patients, while 76.2% were detected in legally resident immigrants. Most imported cases were diagnosed in Latin American immigrants, 71.9%, especially Brazilians, but also Paraguayans, Bolivians, and other nationalities from South and Central America. Imported cases of leprosy are responsible for most leprosy incidents in Spain, and we cannot rule out some underdiagnosis." And so it really does make you wonder, with quite literally millions of illegal border crossers coming here every single year, with the overwhelming majority of them coming from Mexico, Central and South America, are they bringing this ancient disease with them? Well, according to the release from the CDC that they just put out earlier this week, it appears that the agency thinks that this is in fact likely happening. Here's what they wrote. Quote, "Given those reports, there is some support for the theory that international migration of persons with leprosy is a potential source of this transmission. Reports from Spain linked an increase in migration from other countries to an increase in leprosy. The number of international migrants in North America increased from 27.6 million persons in 1990 to 58.7 million in 2020. So a link to migration may account for the increase in incidence of leprosy in historically non-endemic areas." However, having said that, there is still a big question mark, which is that if migration was really the ultimate cause of this uptick, why hasn't Texas become the hotbed of leprosy instead of Central Florida, which is not directly connected to the U.S. southern border? And so while migration is probably a factor, there is likely something else going on in Central Florida that's leading to the surge. Now, what that exactly isn't clear. Perhaps there is some research being done right now which will shed some light on what's really going on, but as of this moment, I'm not exactly sure. But in the meantime, the CDC ended their bulletin by suggesting that leprosy has now become an actual endemic disease within Central Florida. Here's what they wrote, quote, "Our case adds to the growing body of literature suggesting that Central Florida represents an endemic location for leprosy." All right, if you're like me, then probably once a week, you stop for a second and you ponder to yourself, whatever happened to Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video that he made and I was shocked. The man is in his 80s, but he's still kicking butt, staying fit, working out, and staying active. What's even more shocking is that he's stronger, he can work out longer, and he even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. And he says he did this by making one single change. He convinced his wife to make the same change as well, and now she says she feels younger, leaner, and again, she has more energy for her grandkids all day long. Now, Chuck made an awesome video explaining everything, and by watching it, you might actually change your opinion about health. So head on over to chuckdefense.com/Roman and see it for yourself. Again, that's chuckdefense.com/Roman to see what Chuck Norris is up to. And so in short, while we were promised flying cars by now, instead, in the year 2023, we're getting a resurgence of this biblical ancient disease. Very cool. If you'd like to read either the CDC Bulletin or any of the studies that we cited in today's episode, I'll throw all those links down into the description box below this video for you to check out, which I should mention is that description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, which I hope you take a moment to smash. And then also, I'd love to know your thoughts about all this. Do you think that this rise in Florida's leprosy cases are indeed due to the alligators and the armadillos? Or is it because of the unfettered illegal immigration? But if it's because of the immigration, why do you think Texas has now become the epicenter of leprosy in this country? I'd love to know your thoughts, as well as any ideas that you might have about how we can do further research into the area and get to the bottom of what's really happening here. And so leave any comments that you have down in the comments section below. I'll be reading them later tonight, as well as well into the weekend. And then lastly, as I mentioned in the top of the episode as well, if you are just tired of all the censorship here on this platform and all the other social media platforms, well, now is a great time to try the Epoch Times. You can get unlimited access to everything. All the articles, all the infographics, all the shows, movies, documentaries over on Epoch TV, basically everything we publish, and now's a great time with the sale that we're running. And so I'll throw a link to that sale page. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. Just hit that link, and you can head on over and try the Epoch Times for yourself for just a single $1 a month. I'm sure you'll love it. Again, that link is right there at the top of the description box below. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.